is another episode of Levelin Up with Brigham Blackham. I've got my new friend Carol here. She is an awesome expert on leadership. Her name is Carol Metz Murray. She's going to be talking about about naked leadership, which is a way that we can strip away some of the facades that we have as leaders and really get down to communication and how it can help people really connect. And this is something that she's an expert in, and I'm so excited to have her on today. We're part of a speaking group on Facebook, and that's how we got to know each other. And I am so excited and grateful for her to spend a little bit of time with us today and to go a little deeper on leadership. So Carol, can you first start off, let us know a little bit more about your experience and your background, your origin story, if you will.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm excited to be here with you. And I mean, it's been great, as we got to know each other through Facebook. I love technology for many reasons, but that's one of them. So really, my story, gosh, I could go back and forth, but on a variety of stories. My point of where naked leadership truly began was the day that my doctor said to me, Carol, you need to deal with this. And if you don't deal with it, I'll make you deal with it. You have been so stressed for all of your life, and here you are in a mess. And that mess was that I had burnt myself out to the point that my mental health was in tatters, my physical health was in tatters. I was a mess. I didn't even remember my name. Scary stuff.
Wow.
Absolutely scary, scary stuff. And it was also, in essence, what I needed to hear. I guess just get a kick in the backside, perhaps, to say, hey, Carol, you need to deal with this. You really need to deal with this. Otherwise, you're no good to yourself or to anyone else. That was the beginning of naked leadership and my journey to truly begin to discover who I am, who is the authentic, vulnerable, real Carol. That was the beginning of learning to lead myself before I could lead others. And I have been in leadership positions all of my life. So how can I work with others if I don't really know who I am?
That is so true. If we don't understand ourselves, how do we lead somebody else?
That's right. That's right. And it's also very amazing and not so amazing is by getting to that point of total burnout. I mean, I was a workaholic because I had to prove to everybody, especially myself, that I could do the work, that I could get an education, that I, really could rise in the ranks. Well, all of that came with a cost. All of it came with the cost of not taking care of me. And I didn't deal with childhood traumas, nor had I dealt with the trauma from a violence-filled marriage. And everything came crashing down, as it does sometimes if and when you're not paying attention and leading yourself. And I wasn't paying attention. So in essence, yes, that was my journey into naked leadership. And the more that I became naked, and the qualifier here is you keep your clothes on because this is an inside job.
I think it's so fun. Well, it's a great hook though. People are like, naked leadership, what is going on?
Yeah.
But really what the essence of that is, it seems like you're stripping away all those facades. In Chinese, there's this expression of mianzi. It's the face, the honor that we put forth into our space and say, hey, this is who I am. A lot of times we are so much more than the facade that we put on. We strip that away, and who we are on the inside is much more interesting. It's flawed and it's beautiful, but we're not always open enough to let others see. So can you help us understand what the very basic level, what is naked leadership? If you're like saying, hey, I've got a brand new client, never even talked with them before, how do you let them understand what naked leadership is? Go ahead.
Well, naked leadership to me comes in several levels, but quite frankly, if I am talking to a prospective client and I'm meeting with them and they say to me, Carol, I'm a mess. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm in this leadership position. And my question to them is, so where would you rather be? Where would you rather be? When that question gets answered, then it's, what are your values? What is it that you value in your life? You, I'm not talking about your career. I'm not talking about family. What is you value? So in essence, really, it's going to the beginning. It's like using the tree as a metaphor. It's getting to the seed and looking at the seed and how it has been planted and nurtured to then begin to grow. So really, it's going to the heart of the matter. That sounds rather zen? That is, though, the approach that I use with every client, because when I work with someone, it isn't about me.
Mm-hmm.
I partner with them. I'm there to help them create who they are, or who they've forgotten they are, or who they've put aside because they thought they had to be this persona over here. So in essence, then, is discovering those values. Well, if that's your value, if family, for example, is your number one value, where is your family on the scale of 1 to 10 right now? Is it at a 1 or is it at a 10?
Mm.
And it really is the beginning of discovering who you are. And it's different for everyone. There isn't one formula either, from my perspective, because everyone is unique. Everyone is a different character who comes to the table with different perspectives, different, say, issues, different traumas that are keeping them stuck, if that's the right word, or keeping them from feeling fulfilled. Because oftentimes what I find in leadership, and we're all leaders, is that people have this huge emptiness inside of them because they've disconnected from who they are.
Mm. So let's talk about disconnection for just a moment, because it's really easy to disconnect. It's not always easy to reconnect. So how do we know that we're disconnected from who we're supposed to be? And what are some of the steps that you've noticed, or the processes that you've noticed, to reconnect?
Well, certainly one of the ways to notice that you're disconnected is what I just said, is that there's this feeling of emptiness inside of you.
Mm.
Or another one is that people are looking for happiness in the external environment.
Yes.
They're going after this, and then they're going after that, and then they're going after that, when in essence it's stop. Just stop.
Mm.
What's going on, and who are you being at that moment? And it's really easy to disconnect, because for me, if I hadn't disconnected from who I was, would I have burnt out? Probably not. But I wasn't paying attention to what I needed. I disconnected to thinking that was how I was coping. My disconnection was a coping method and a strategy for what was going on in my life that I didn't want to face.
You know, that reminds me of a quote. I'm not going to get it perfect, but this idea that if you're really living your soul purpose, you love something, you have a boundless amount of energy and excitement and enthusiasm that you can pour into it. But if you honestly don't love something, if you're disconnected and you're doing something that you're not passionate about, it's very finite, the amount of energy that we can put into that and still be able to come out the other side and be okay. So let's talk about this. When you are reconnecting someone that has been disconnected for a long time, what are some of the very simple processes that you give them, or maybe even tools to say, hey, let's figure out where you're at and how we can take that next step?
Well, there's a variety of different things that I do, depending again on an individual.
Mhm.
And depending on where they are in their life. One of the strategies that I will use with individuals is a very simple strategy that I refer to as release, reclaim, rewrite it, and then you receive it. And it is, if there is something that is really, really bothering you when we meet, and it's a matter of, for a woman, it's put your left hand over your heart, or for a man, it's put your right hand over your heart and release. Maybe it's anger. So release that, it's really concentrate on it. So it's like a mini meditation. Release the anger. Like, just let it go.
Yeah.
Then you reclaim that space that's now empty. Yeah. Reclaim that space. Okay, now what are you going to rewrite it with? So in essence, if you were angry, what is it that was the tipping point that made you angry? What's the emotion underneath that? How can you rewrite it? So it may mean in essence, you do a mindset shift. You go from a negative to a positive. And then in essence, you take that in. You receive that in that empty space. It could be, I'm angry because I keep telling myself I'm a loser. And you shift that to something that suits you, that says, I am who I am, and I am filled with happiness, whatever it might be. But even those tiny little shifts, I mean, I did that I went through that exercise with someone actually in a discovery call, and they were so stressed and they were bouncing, and literally, I mean, they were bouncing all over the place. And I just said, stop, just stop. Let's do this little exercise. And it was amazing. It was like I could actually hear them releasing. And we were on Zoom, but I could hear them releasing. And when the exercise was finished, it was like, oh, I can breathe. Yes, now you can breathe because you've moved all of that energy, you've let it go.
Yeah.
So, as I said to the individual, look at the weight that energy had and how it was holding you down.
That's so good. That reminded me of an analogy that I used as a Sunday school class that I was teaching. I brought these balloons, I filled up these little balloons, and I had people do their very best to keep all of the balloons in the air at the same time. They'd hit them, and they weren't filled with helium, so they wouldn't stay up. They'd have to hit them, and eventually a few would fall down. They're like, man, I just can't do it. I said, hey, keep the balloon in the air. And they kept doing it, and they were so frantic, and they got all jazzed up. And then I said, all right, now let's put all of the balloons down but one. Now keep the balloon in the air. Every single one of these little kids could do it. Sometimes it's not that we are not capable, it's that we are unfocused, that we don't put that balloon down and say, I'm going to do this only until I can get it right. And then perfect. All right, now I'm done with that one. Put that down. I'm gonna do my next balloon. It doesn't need to be that complicated, right? It sounds like this release, reclaim, rewrite. That is a great tool. I love that. Do you have another story that maybe you wish someone knew this before they went through some traumatic or dramatic experience, that you're like, man, after I shared this tool of releasing, they were able to find some peace or clarity? Do you have an experience of a client or something of that nature?
I have a client who, yes, a client who came to me when I was actually in a leadership position. And I took me two meetings with this individual to figure out that it was I was being called to help this client. I was actually in a CEO position, but this client who really needed to be seeing staff wanted to talk with me.
Hmm.
And then it was, oh, okay, I get it. I'm getting the message. And so this client came in, sat in my office, and they started to do this, I mean, they were running, yes, this. And the next thing I knew was out of my mouth came the words, so when are you going to stop running?
Ooh.
And immediately the river of tears started. And it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'm sitting there watching, just, really, really focused on this client. And then I happened to see what was on their feet. And I said, do you always wear running shoes? And that brought them out of their river of tears. And they looked at me and they said, yes. They said, well, isn't that a metaphor for your life? So what would happen in your life if you actually walked? And they sat straight up straight up in the chair.
Mm-hmm.
And looked at me, said, I'd never thought of that. Said, off you go. You figure it out. Let me know what you figure it out, what it is. I never heard from them for about a month. And then they showed up at my door and they said, I just want you to know, I have signed up to go back to school. I have found a place to live. And I am working on issues with my children to get them back.
Hmm.
And look at the shoes I'm wearing now.
I love that.
But it was in that moment of just, even me getting out of my own way and allowing the message of naked leadership to come through is, you are in charge of your life now. So lead your life and move forward. So, I mean, it was just so amazing to watch the transformation in this individual. And that was what they needed to kickstart their life in a different direction.
I think sometimes when you have a conversation with someone that's farther down the road, they've been there, done that, they've got a different perspective than you. When you have a conversation, one question can unlock so much potential. Just that, when are you going to stop running? That changed the trajectory of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Just like an airplane going to Bali, they're going to be off course 99% of the time, but those micro course corrections will get them to their destination. We have to know where we're going, but we don't have to know the how. The how only shows up after we've arrived.
That's right.
So I'm curious, Carol, when you are uh when you're kind of working through some of these challenges with yourself and taking off that facade, the masks that we all put up, what has helped you stay vulnerable as a leader to be able to lead with your heart and your soul rather than with this is my authority and you just need to listen to me, you know? Go ahead.
Great, great question. So really, what has kept me humbled? Just given all of my history, one of my leadership um, skill sets was that I have always asked for feedback and input from those that I have led. But the humbling experience of moving forward as a leader, it's not about me being right, and it's been how can we make this happen? Now, what is it that we need to do to bring this forward? And that has been sometimes it takes a lot of energy to bring people in because they're, for whatever reason, may be resistant to fully stepping into who they are. And the only person I can change is me.
Yeah.
And actually, that too is part and parcel of it. The more that I change, the more others will change around me. The more that I step into who I am, the more that will shine for others to see, and they will step forward in who they are. So being there for clients, being that partner, being that co-creator, and being that demonstration of, I know you can do this. I know you can step into your greatness, and demonstrating who I am, being there, being present for them, fully present for them.
Love it. You know that I'm reading a book right now called Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. I love this book. I've read it once before, but there's this moment in that book that just reminded me of this. She was at a C-level event and she's like, oh, this is people that are, on the ground level. She's like, no, there was like CEOs, CFOs, and she got this fear inside of her that she's like, I don't know if I can do this. She called her husband and she was like, I don't know if I can do this. I've got all these ideas, but and she was just struggling. And then her husband turned to her and he basically said, they're just people. All of us have dreams, we have hopes, we all have things we're challenged with and struggles. Just find the person that is like resonating with what you're saying and deliver it to that person. Sometimes we get so caught up that we aren't perfect. We don't have all the real estate that we want. We don't have all the money that we don't want. We've got so many different struggles that are outside of our control that we put on these self-limiting beliefs. But when we are willing to open up and let other people see we are not perfect. I'm not perfect. Carol's not perfect. Guys, all the guys on online, we're not perfect. And that's okay. We're going through this mortal experience. And leadership, in my experience, has been about raising your hand and saying, hey, if you need help, I'm here for you. It's like being a water tower, not the firefighter.
Yeah.
They need to get the water, you give them the water so they can go fight their own fire. And it's so important to realize we don't have to be that firefighter in every single person's life. So Carol, tell me a little bit more. What if you were going to be helping us understand how to level up in our leadership? What is some advice that you would give us?
Well, first, before I respond to that, I'm going to share with you something that came up in a conversation the other day. When we talk about we don't need to be perfect, is to remember everything is perfectly imperfect and imperfectly perfect.
I love it.
So getting on to advice for someone to up-level who they are. One of the ways, and this comes from personal experience, to up-level who I was and who you are, is when you look, I'm going to use the word intimacy.
Okay.
Okay. And often we think of, or when the word intimacy comes out, we think of intimacy with a partner. But I take the word intimacy as into me I see. And I am I. But it was in up-leveling who I am, and my leadership is to look at the little eyes. So the little eyes in me. What is it that triggers me? What is it about Susie over there, who's part of my team, and she just annoys me? Well, Susie is annoying me because Susie is mirroring back to me stuff that's going on inside of me. So what is it in me that I need to release so that I see Susie fully for who she is? So that's certainly one way. And for me, it's critical that we continue to kind of grow and learn, or learn and grow who we are. And the more that I am able to take those little T's, those little I's, and discard them, the stronger the I becomes. And then the I in whatever kind of relationship, in the leadership role or whatever, if you have an I, that turns into a me plus me, and you have stronger inner strength. That may sound Zen, but it is a way of building your strength as a leader. It is a way of saying, well, golly gee, I don't need that anymore. That's not serving me. So have a look at internally what is going on for you. And I will say to you just something that's happened to me very recently. And here I am, a speaker, and have been speaking for a good number of years. And I received feedback that I was too professional. So what does that actually mean? And that's somebody else giving me feedback. So, and I'm remembering that's coming from, so what's going on for them? However, I took 10 steps back to say, okay, so what is the message that I'm then delivering? Who am I being? And I discovered, for me, it was, okay, Carol, you really need to get deeper into your heart and speak from your heart versus your head.
Oh, that's a great insight. Speak from not your head.
Yes. And the more that I got into looking at this, and one way to help me was that I stepped on to doing a 30-day video challenge where I did a video every day, a 10-minute video, could do it on Zoom, but not look at myself, and just talk about what was going on inside of me. Amazing how much was going on, and it surprised me. But actually, the more that I talked, the more I got it out, and I know that I am different. Because if it sits inside, it's heavy weight. So in essence is really, get in to your heart. And I believe it's, what is his name? Albert Brenner, who says the longest distance or longest journey you will ever take is the 18-inch journey from the top of your head to your heart, where you come at life through your heart and have your head follow. Because our head is all about safety and security, keeping us safe. The heart is the creativity and the curiosity and who are you being in this moment. So that, that's a big one for me. And, I encourage everybody to give that a go and see what happens.
Yeah. Get out of our own head.
Yes.
Start living through our heart.
Yes.
Man, this makes me think of a handful of different things, but one of them recently was I have a coach named Greg Kimball. He's awesome. He's one of our instructors here in our real estate community, but he talks about sharing heartbeats with people. Don't worry about sharing moments, share heartbeats. And the difference and the distinction there is when we are having a heart-to-heart conversation, it's very different than mind-to-mind. Heart-to-heart is we're willing to open up and connect and be vulnerable and be intimate and let our guard down a little bit. And I think that's part of what I'm hearing here. I'm still new to this idea of naked leadership, but being willing to let our guard down, to actually connect on a human level rather than just an intellectual level.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Carol, what is something that that people online don't know about you that you would love to share that will help us understand your story a little bit better, help us connect with you a little bit more? Tell us one of those stories.
Well, there's many stories, but one I will share with you on my leadership journey is not only am I full of curiosity, I'm also have an adventurous streak. So I'm often doing things that, oh golly gee, but I've never done that before. One of the things that I did when I lived in the far, far north, I decided I was going to take a leadership course. This was a leadership course that was going to be on the water. And the prerequisite was that you had never, ever canoed before.
Oh, wow.
And we would be doing whitewater rafting.
Okay.
Well, I was so scared. And yet there was this little voice that said, you got to go do it, Carol. Just go and do it. So it was 2 weeks long, and there were 10 women and 2 women instructors. So there we were doing whitewater rafting, living, on the river, sleeping beside the river, and most everybody afraid of the bears because we were in grizzly country.
Oh, wow.
But it was an adventure. I mean, I can laugh about it even more now, but just think about this from the convenience of home and where you have the bed and you have the bathroom and you have the toilet. When you're out in nature, you have to take care of things in a different way. And for me, because I grew up on the Canadian prairies and understood some of what was in front of us, there were moments of some laughter when the question was, well, did you bring a porta potty? And what the woman was handed was, here's a shovel. You go figure it out.
That's awesome.
Yep. There were things like that. There were There was that experience of there you are canoeing down the river, and golly gee, what's standing on the riverbank looking at you? None other than Mr. Grizzly.
Oh,
And
good.
everybody panicking. It's just literal panic. And I remember I hadn't come face to face with a grizzly, but there I was, is calm down, like calm down, because the more fear that you escalate, the quicker the bear will be over here. So calm down and move out of fear, and the bear will walk away. So it was just like, calm down. And the bear did turn and leave, and then it was, well, Carol, how would you know that? That's intuitive because I have a connection with animals, but it was adventures like that, or an adventure of sitting under a tree. That doesn't sound like much, but when you're in the wilderness and you never know what animal might come to visit you, that was pretty daunting for all of us. And I've got to tell you, going through the Whitewater Rapids, holy doodles. That took all sorts of concentration and the skills of focus and the skills of action, because you needed to just move the canoe in the right way and do the right stroke at the right time, or otherwise you would end up in the water, not going through it. So, and never having canoed before, oh, let me tell you, there was some hair-raising seconds, but we all got through it without anyone tipping their canoe.
Oh, wow.
So really and truly, that adventure. And the other thing too, I forgot, was we had no phones. We were not connected to the outside world, so to speak. So really it was learning to be in silence as well.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an adventure.
Oh,
Meeting a grizzly bear while you're using the natural facilities and seeing what's we're talking about vulnerability. My goodness.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've got a shovel and that's it.
That's it.
That's
That's
so
it. You
funny.
go figure it out. So really and truly then taking that and incorporating that, allowing well, for me, I know it was to actually then sit back and go, wow,
Mm.
wow, I did that. That's part of me. That didn't, some of it came from here, but some of it also came from my heart. And it was like, yes, it's okay, Carol, to be vulnerable, and so look for those opportunities with those that you are leading, to get them to step into situations where they will have the opportunity to grow and expand themselves. Be there as the guide. Yeah, be there as the grizzly on the bank.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah.
And I love this expression, holy doodles, because when something's new and exciting, things just come out of our mouths that we don't even know we're there before. So I'm curious, how have you created holy doodle moments for your clients?
Oh, that is a great question. Well, one that comes up for me is with a client who is very much into nature,
Mhm.
very, very much spends time in nature. It was in a session that we were having. As I listened to them, it was out of my mouth came, what might serve you well is advice from a tree.
Hmm.
And they were, what do you mean? Well, what do you think a tree would say? And think about a tree. Think about it. It
Hmm.
starts from a seed, and that seed grows. Nobody tells it how to grow. Nobody tells it that it needs to establish a foundational base, that it needs to have strong roots. It just does that. So what do you think the advice from a tree might be? Certainly as one is remember your roots. Remember to stand tall.
Mm.
Remember what the seasons of nature bring for you. And from that point on, we referenced the advice from a tree in every session. And that truly resonated with them because of their tie into nature and their need to be grounded, you know, by standing on soil, not on concrete or a floor. So that was a profound moment for that particular client. In
That
fact,
just,
yeah.
oh, go ahead. I was just saying, that reminds me of a story that I heard of one of the prophets in my church. He talked about how he left a wedge in a tree, a little metal wedge. And as the tree grew, he forgot about it for years. As the tree grew, it eventually split because that wedge had worked itself in there and gotten worse and worse and worse. And it wasn't difficult to remove. It would have been just take it out and it would have been fine. But sometimes we have these experiences that can split us if we don't get them out of our life. And
Mhm.
sometimes we've got these wedges in our life that will prevent our growth. Even though we're growing, the tree was growing like it was supposed to. It had good soil, it had good light, everything was working for it, but the wedge obstructed its growth so much that it eventually split and it killed the tree. So let's go along this idea, because I think this is a fun thing to worry about, or not to worry about, to explore. And tell us a little bit more how with this client you're able to, you know, expand this analogy of what can you learn from a tree.
Well, they took the tree, you know, as said, the tree came up in every session. And depending on what it was that they were dealing with, you know, in a session, you know, it was something of the analogy of a tree. Well, a tree, depending on the type of the tree, it is turn over a new leaf.
Hmm.
You know, so that could very much be seasonal. But a tree also, wherever it is, it enjoys the view around it. You don't hear a tree complaining. You know, it's not like, get out of my way, I can't see the view. It just keeps growing. It keeps expanding. And that was the other thing as well. From a tree's perspective, continue to grow.
Hmm.
Don't settle for the status quo.
That's so good. I love it. This reminds me of another tree analogy. It's like, hey, can you count the amount of seeds in an apple? You're like, yeah, of course. Well, you break it open, you're like, oh, it's got 12 seeds. But can you count the amount of apples in a seed? No,
Yeah.
because it is possibility
Yeah.
and it's growth. And if that seed has been planted in a good place and it's nurtured and it has the potential to grow, it can not just produce one apple, it can produce thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands, because that apple falls and then the tree grows and can become a forest. So this idea of what can you learn from a tree, is there anything else that pops into your mind as far as your practice or coaching or even stories that you're like, man, this is something else that I think would be helpful here?
Well, from a tree's perspective, go out on a limb,
Mm.
take some risks, be open to change, because change is going to happen, and continue to grow with that change and with that shift. And again, that's all tree related.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, all of that, ensure your foundation is strong. So that's where you get to the lead yourself before you lead others.
Right.
Be the leader in your life. So in essence, I mean, it's the other two is reach out, and reach for the sky, all sorts of possibilities.
I love that.
I mean, yeah, the
Oh,
truth.
this just popped into my head. I'm just riffing with you. I think it's so fun. Sometimes seeds fall on bad ground, right? I've heard this in the Bible. There's lots of different examples of it falls by the wayside or gets trodden underfoot. Sometimes as humans, we get stuck thinking that our environment isn't as important as it actually is. If we are in a bad environment, we need to uproot and transplant that tree somewhere that it actually can grow, that it can have the sunlight, that it can have the nourishment that it needs, and that it can have good soil. So in your life, have you ever had people that have maybe been in a bad relationship, or they've been in something that has been really just an awful environment, and when you took them out of that environment and put them in something else, they just thrived?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. In some of the work that I have been involved in. And I mean, I've seen it in, say, relationships
Mhm.
that just are, they're not going anywhere. They're dead end, and neither individual as a couple is, they're not going to grow. They're going to really deteriorate. So I have actually seen and witnessed, an individual taking them out of the environment. And I mean, the story I gave you earlier about stopping running,
Yeah.
that was someone who took themselves out of the environment that they were in, and they recreated an environment, a new environment.
Yeah.
you know, and they did go through the schooling. They completed the schooling. They then got a job, and they then also were able to deal with what they needed to deal with where children were involved, where their children were involved. So they recreated their whole life. Where over here, they were in an environment that they felt they couldn't get out of. And the analogy of the running shoes is they just kept running in circles.
I think using powerful analogies that you can look at from multiple perspectives helps in so many different ways. So one of the points of this podcast is to really help us understand how to level up, how to find patterns of progress. And I'm curious if you could help us understand some patterns of progress that you've seen in leaders. What would be some advice that you would share on that? Patterns of progress.
So pattern of progress for me begins with a commitment.
Mm.
And that is, I need to change. And I can use my own story where the day that I committed, committed to myself, admitted, and then committed to myself that I needed to change my life because nobody was going to change it for me.
Right.
No one's coming to save me. No one's coming to save you. But it's making that commitment to do one thing, just one thing to move yourself forward. So it may be, as a CEO, you realize and deep down, that if you shifted your behavior in how you see your staff, that productivity would increase.
Mm.
Because quite frankly, performance is related to productivity, and performance is also related to how we all get along together. So as that CEO, if you stop and say, okay, this isn't working, be committed to actually making that statement. I need to change. I need to find something to help me see the world differently.
Mm.
It really does start with a decision. It's making a decision, decide now. And you mentioned Brene Brown. Well, she spoke and speaks very highly on courage.
Yeah.
So for me, as you make that commitment, but as you wanting to level up, is decide. And then, yes, when you decide, open up the courage that you have kept contained and not allowed to come out. And for that, I use the analogy is open up the container that surrounds your heart. For me, courage sits. Courage, which turns into bravery, sits beside, around your heart. So does fear. And at that time, you take fear and you send it to the back of the bus. You don't need it anymore because you've now stepped into courage.
Like
And
that.
and you grow your courage muscle by, okay, I've made that decision, so today I will do this. It's no really up leveling who you are as a person and committing to make that change. It could be, look at a commitment. The change may be you need to improve your health in order to be a better leader. Okay, so make the commitment that each day you will walk 5,000 steps. And you do that. You made that commitment. Maybe you need somebody to help you keep accountable, but you
100%.
do that day in and day out. You ask for support. Ask others, tell others this is what you're doing, and they will help you keep accountable. But even not even that, that is a commitment that you have just made to yourself. So if you make that one and keep it, then you realize you have a look and say, hey, I just did that. So now I have the bravery to take the next step, and I can look at, oh, that behavior. Where did that behavior come from? Why do I have this need to be right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it my way or the highway? And be open then to begin to look. It could get a little messy, but life is messy. But as you look at that, then you're also up-leveling who you are. And when you see where that behavior has come from, that pattern that you put in place for whatever reason to, get you through a time of your life, and you didn't let it go, well, you can let it go. That may sound simple, and sometimes it is just as, okay, I don't need it, goodbye. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work.
I love that. It does take a little bit of work sometimes. And while you were talking, this idea of how we treat people, it just keeps popping up to the surface, that if we treat people with that idea of how we see them in their potential rather than where they are right now. Leadership is not about saying, this is what you've done, this is who you are right now. It's about saying, I see greatness in you. I see your genius. I see there is potential that is untapped. And if we treat if I use this medical analogy, if we treat the symptom only, the cure doesn't come. But if we treat the cause, the reason that they may not be producing in certain ways, then there can be healing that happens and progress can happen. So I'm curious, in your experience, what are some of those external struggles that you've had, those challenges that you're like, man, this this almost derailed my career, or this almost took me out of the game, but because of your mindset, your skill set, your tool set, you're able to work through those really difficult challenges. Tell us a story about those challenges.
Well, one of my challenges was um, the coping strategy that I developed as a little girl was that whole piece around being a workaholic, that whole piece around being perceived as being perfect. That's the persona that I built. And that's the persona that I went forward with in the world. So the pressure that I put on myself to constantly be perfect sometimes had some not great moments, because as the perfectionist, I would automatically say, well, I should have known better. And I would heap all the blame on my shoulders. And in essence, it did backfire on me, because I did burn out. And at that time, I then ended up also losing what I referred to as my dream job.
Wow.
So that was a huge negative. Now, I'll share with you an incident where there was some humor to it, and I actually laughed, but only when I was by myself.
Okay.
I was doing a project with a government agency. And I will just, a qualifier is that I have soft sounds dyslexia. So I did this report and I presented it to 4 individuals, and they were all male. We're sitting in the meeting. And I kept looking at each one of them, and I knew something was going on. Nobody would say anything. And I thought, what, okay, is the report not what they wanted? I thought that we had met, and this was, the research I had done and the information I had gathered. This is what they said they wanted. Finally, I just said, can you tell me what it is about the report that you are struggling with? Immediately, there were 4 red faces. Oh, this is going from bad to worse. Absolutely. So I said, it was a vulnerable moment. If I think about it now, I said, okay, can you tell me what it is in the report that has you tongue-tied and unable to tell me what it is? One of the men takes the report and pushes it to me and points at a word. And I looked at it and I just went, oh no. Technology is wonderful. Spell check is wonderful. The word that I needed to have in the report was public. The word that I actually had written was pubic.
It's awesome. I love that.
And of course, it wasn't just one place in the report, it was in a variety of places.
Wow. Talk about naked leadership. There you go.
Oh, it was naked. I mean, I looked at all of them and I apologized profusely, and I said, I will fix this, and I said, is there anything else And they said, no, the report's fine. And I said, okay, thank you.
I'm going to go to the salon. We're going to get it waxed. We're good.
Yeah,
It'll be cleaned up.
yeah,
It'll
yeah.
be awesome.
So, Lakewood leadership has some, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we're willing to be vulnerable and allow those mistakes to just be and say, hey, I'm not perfect, and that's okay. I feel more endeared to you because you shared that story. All of us make mistakes. I'm going to share a story with you as well, because this is me being vulnerable. When I was a missionary, I was learning Mandarin Chinese. I was struggling to do this. My first couple months in Taiwan, I had a little bit of struggle with that idea of I'm just going to apply what I'm learning. And I went to this grocery store, right? I walk in, you hear this ting ding, right? You walk in, and I had this word in my mind. I was like, okay, I'm going to be saying xiangjiao, which means banana, xiangjiao. And I went up and I talked to this nice Taiwanese lady with my companion. I was like, 你们有没有姓jiao? And she looked at me, and my companion looked at me like abhorred. And I was like, oh shoot, I said something wrong there. And what I asked her was, hey, do you have any sexual intercourse? And the difference from xiangjiao banana and xingjiao was so similar. In my young, didn't understand Mandarin way, I embarrassed this young woman so much she could not speak to me. And I was so embarrassed, I didn't even end up buying the bananas. We walked out and super embarrassed. Sometimes it's those little moments that make it so memorable. And I'll never forget that word now.
No.
So, just like public, you're like, I'm never going to misspell public as pubic ever again.
Nope.
So.
Never, ever again. Never, ever again.
It's so true. So sometimes we need to lean into those mistakes, and don't let those mistakes like wear you down. Like I could have beaten myself up and be like, oh, that was horrible. But actually, in language learning, in business, those mistakes will empower us to do better. They empower us to say, wow, I made a really big mistake and I'm okay. Wow. Let's keep going. We can do this. So we are right at the end of our time. Carol, thank you so much for your insights. It was so much fun to talk with you and get to know you a little bit better. Tell us how my audience and everyone else can get to know you a little bit more. Where can they find you on social media?
Your audience can find me on my website, which is www.carolmetzmurray.com. You can find me there. And they can also find me on LinkedIn at Carol Metz Murray. You can find me on Facebook. Again, Carol Metz Murray. You can find me on Facebook business as the Human Development Leadership. And on Instagram, I'm Carol Metz 2718.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, energy, and effort that you put into our community today. And always fun to talk with you in that speaker group. So awesome.
Okay. And can I leave you with one final thing?
I would love that. Go ahead.
And I am not going to, I've already done this, is I have sent you a huge virtual hug. And I will just tell you that the acronym HUG or HUGS stands for Help Us Grow Spiritually. So hugs are an absolute heart-to-heart connection. I love giving hugs, and the meaning of the acronym of HUGS got downloaded for me one day when I was walking on a beach in Vancouver. So yes, it's Help Us Grow Spiritually.
Help Us Grow Spiritually, HUGS. Thank you for that. It's a great little acronym. I think it's beautiful.
Okay.
I'm gonna go. I'll close the live stream. But once again, thanks so much, guys. Feel free, those that are still online, to stick around. I'm gonna send you guys a little gift just for being on today. It's my Levelin Up social media PDF that I wrote recently, and really grateful to have you on one more time, guys. I'm gonna stop the live stream. Bye, Facebook. Okay, perfect. I'm going to send this to you guys in the chat as well. And then if if you have any specific questions, we'll give you one or two questions, and you can ask Carol, and then we'll be off on our way. We've got Divya and Theo and Berta and Joy and Carly. Thank you so much for being on today, guys. Go ahead. If you have any specific questions, would love to let you guys on there. I'll unpin here. Remove pin. Remove pin. Yeah, go ahead. And if you have a specific question, feel free to ask it. Otherwise, we'll end it right here. And thank you for being on today, guys. We've got Carly as well, and we had Deborah and Chuck and Doug and Amy and Celeste. I think I said everybody's name. And Theo. Perfect. Well, let me give you this. This is my intake form for my virtual newsletter that I send out. And it has updates about when I do my podcasts. It also has different value adds with understanding, real estate and business and stuff like that. So would love to connect with you guys there. If you haven't already gotten my my newsletters before, hopefully they're very, very valuable. And I'm always doing my best to provide value first. Value first. That's so important. So here it is in the chat under that form. If you guys click that, it'll bring up a way that you can connect with me a little bit more, and you can read my little book that I wrote. It's kind of fun. I took different ideas from people all across my understanding of social media, and it's been really fun. So if you guys have any other specific questions, we can do that. Got a moment left. Any questions? Going once. Going twice. All right. Just so that we have one extra little thing of value, do you have any other things, Carol, that you're like, oh, this was a story I wish I would have said, but I didn't?
No, I could get into more and more stories.
Oh, for sure.
This has been wonderful. I feel so blessed to have spent this hour with you and to get to know you. And thank you to everybody who is on the call as well. So happy that you are here. And in closing, for all of you and for everyone everywhere, everyone be blessed.
Thank you so much. Okay, God bless, guys. Have a great rest of your day. See ya.